Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Tuesday, June 6, 2023, and we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ+ community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, trans, student and youth, seniors, HIV and AIDS, healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Elijah Manley. Elijah is a community organizer, activist, and formerly the youngest ever candidate for the Florida House of Representatives. He is the owner of Benchmark Strategies, a South Florida consulting firm. Welcome, Elijah.
Welcome, nice to be here. Let's welcome anchor Jacob Reide Jennings, a professional ballroom and Latin dancer turned real estate broker and philanthropist. Jacob uses his life experience as a youth who experienced homelessness to help those in our community find housing and humor. In 2020, Jacob used his vast real estate investment knowledge to found the Sherlock Holmes Foundation, named after his dog, to address LGBTQ youth housing insecurity. Currently, his foundation has houses in Colorado, North Carolina, and Virginia. Welcome, Jacob.
Why, thank you. And if anybody wants to participate, we are selling our foundation t-shirts as a fundraiser for Pride this month. So go to sherlockshomes.org, that's SHERLOCKSHOMES.org, and get yours today.
Amazing.
Oh, where is this not working now all of a sudden? That's the pointer. Okay, let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is the founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ Council, a community-based organization that unites the LGBTQ+ community in Greater Hollywood with a focus on life, government, and business. The council launched My Hollywood Pride in 2022, and their third annual event is scheduled for January 2024. Jeff is returning as co-chair for the upcoming 2023 LGBTQ Task Force Gala being held on October 14th in Miami Beach. The National LGBTQ Task Force is celebrating their 50th anniversary, and their events, including Winter Party Festival, had given back more than $3.3 million to LGBTQ community organizations in South Florida. Welcome, Jeff.
Happy to be here. Happy to make a few incredible announcements. Tomorrow, if anyone is in the Hollywood area, we'll be raising the Progress Pride flag at 12:30 at City Hall, along with the our city government. So we're very excited about that, along with the council and My Hollywood Pride. And then on Thursday night, we'll be having a Pride social event in downtown Hollywood with our LGBTQ community and allies at the Greek Joint on Hollywood Boulevard. So come out and join us and celebrate some Pride in Hollywood.
Sounds fun.
Absolutely. Now, let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, an inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 9 books, including the forthcoming Refrain in Light, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ+ and mainstream publications and websites. His movie review column, Screensaver, can be found in San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, Q Notes Carolinas, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Good evening, and I just want to do a little plug here for Chasten Buttigieg, and he will be at Books and Books in Coral Gables on June 12th at 7 p.m. And this is his book, his memoir, that was initially published for an adult readership and is now out in a younger reader's edition. So you go, Chasten.
And the conversation will be moderated by someone from the task force.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, Maya will be there.
Maya, right,
Yes.
right, cool.
So we'll be there to join you.
Great. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the Queer News for today, Tuesday, June 6th. It's National Yo-Yo Day, and I'm not talking about DeSantis either.
You came into the studio tonight with a yo-yo.
Yo-yoing,
Yes.
yeah. Good pastime.
I thought it was a discussion about your personality.
Wow.
All right, we're off to the races. All right, let's begin Queer News by queering up breaking news. DeSantis trans healthcare bans are partially struck down by federal judge. A ruling from the U.S. District Court Judge Robert Hinkle today grants a preliminary injunction that blocks enforcement of a law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis and rules from the Florida Department of Medicine. Those rules prevent a group of trans youth who sued the state from accessing widely accepted care, including puberty blockers and hormone therapy, and the ban on treatment has been paused while their legal challenge plays out. In his ruling, Judge Hinkle writes, quote, "The elephant in the room should be noted at the outset. Gender identity is real. The record makes this clear. The medical defendants, speaking through their attorneys, have admitted it. Still, an unspoken suggestion running just below the surface in some of the proceedings that led to adoption of the statute and rules at issue, and just below the surface in the testimony of some of the defense experts, is that transgender identity is not real, that it is made up. Any proponent of the challenged statute and rules should put up or shut up. Do you acknowledge that there are individuals with actual gender identities opposite their natal sex, or do you not? Dog whistles ought not be tolerated." End quote. Oh my goodness.
That was so
It's an interesting position of the judge because, first, this is not a state court. It is a federal court. And just like the stay that we saw this week in Tennessee, a federal court challenge on constitutionality is much, much harder than a supermajority GOP evangelical-led state house. Nashville in Tennessee is going to have difficulties. Tallahassee in Florida is going to have difficulties. Austin in Texas is going to have difficulties when it starts into the federal circuit. Now, the question here is on the stay and the hearing of what would happen, because it's going to be challenged and challenged beyond into the courts, but to the Supreme Court. But I continue to say, wow, what amazing news in June Pride Month this is, because the federal courts are going to say you have constitutional obligations to move beyond the vagueness of your law. When you pass a law about drag in Florida that is designed to prevent performance of drag and not use the word drag in your bill, you're unconstitutionally vague, which is what the federal court said on Tennessee. When you make the exact same decision on trans to deny in a sub form of disguise conversation that identity doesn't exist, a federal judge is going to stay it, which is what happened today. let's not count our chickens before they hatch.
The 11th Circuit is just around the corner.
But the news is exceptionally good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who else really enjoys it when Ron Dion gets slapped on the wrist? It's really nice to see that.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's another reminder of why voting matters, and this judge was a Clinton appointee. So again, we hate to use the court system to be so political, but obviously the other side has completely politicized the courts. So it's a reminder that we have elections coming up. These judges, Biden is doing a great job of trying to get judges through as many appointees. I think he's set a record for the amount of appointees that he has. So, for all those out there that were not excited by Biden, especially amongst our own community, I'm speaking to you, this is why it's important, because he is going to appoint judges that are going to support our community.
And let's talk about hypocrites.
Yes.
My friends, Sean and Laura, and used to be Tucker, are saying tonight, I haven't watched them yet, but I will watch them. I guarantee you the lead soundbite that's going to come out of Fox in all three of the major blocks tonight are going to be activist judges. Activist judges. Excuse me. Isn't that exactly what you did in the last year and a half of the Obama administration by preventing appointment on the Supreme Court? Activist judges. It's good for you when it's good for you, and not like today. Next, we continue to queer up breaking news. Violence and legislative attacks on LGBTQ plus lead the HRC to declare a national state of emergency.
These aren't isolated. We can see a pattern, and the pattern has really been building. And I think it's something that we're going to have to continue to monitor very closely going into the end of Pride Month.
Sam Jones is with the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. The project found anti-LGBTQ plus mobilization in the U.S. increase more than 4 times from 2020 to 2021. This year's incidence of political violence targeting that community already exceeds the total number of attacks reported last year. The Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, some of whose members stormed the Capitol on January 6, are some of the same groups targeting LGBTQ plus events.
Who brought the pedophile?
Earlier this month, authorities say Proud Boys members showed up at a drag queen story hour in San Lorenzo, California, shouting transphobic slurs.
These people should be put to death.
That sentiment echoed in Texas, but this time in a sermon at a church outside of Dallas.
They should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head.
Extremism researchers say disinformation and a wave of legislation targeting the LGBTQ plus community is fueling the rise in attacks.
Through the rest of the year and going into the midterms, where I think this is just going to be one among multiple issues where far-right groups like the Proud Boys and others are going to be trying to ramp up tensions and ultimately possibly escalate violence.
Well, less than a month since issuing a travel advisory for LGBTQ plus individuals who might plan to visit Florida, the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest LGBTQ plus advocacy group, has issued a state of emergency today for the LGBTQ plus community. Across U.S. state legislatures, at least 417 anti-LGBTQ plus bills were introduced in roughly the first quarter of 2023, a new record, and twice the number of such bills introduced all of last year, according to the American Civil Liberties Union data. They include pronoun refusal laws, forced student outing laws, anti-drag bans, and don't say LGBTQ plus laws. The HRC has insisted it will not back down from attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, saying, quote, LGBTQ plus people nationwide will not be erased, not now, not ever, end quote. Interesting from my standpoint in terms of declaring a state of emergency. I think, to be honest, it is more symbolic than action-oriented, but the symbolism is, I'm sure, what the HRC is trying to establish. This comes right on the heels of Georgetown Law Center issuing the advisory, the emergency advisory, about their concerns about gun violence in the month of June at Pride events. They've issued a statement saying that we are in a heightened awareness of gun violence potential at Pride events this month because of states like Florida that has allowed open carry and non-registration laws, et cetera, that passed in this session. The one last thing that I would say that's interesting, I applaud, frankly, Queer News Tonight, showing Steadfast Church in Texas, where the pastor there says they should be lined up against the wall, facing the wall, and shot in the back of the head. Now, overwhelmingly, Americans do not support that voice. But those that are on the fence of violence against LGBT, they should listen to those kind of voices, because Proud Boys, Homefront, other organizations, that's where the fueling of that voice at Steadfast in Texas is coming from. And the overwhelming majority of Americans should stand up with the LGBTQ community this month and say, that's unacceptable and that's un-American, and we won't stand for it.
Well, on July 1st, the first day after Pride Month in Florida, if you want a gun, you can go right on the street and get one, on demand.
On demand.
And what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, this past weekend was Wear Orange weekend for gun violence awareness, and as I was here a week after I was on Hollywood Beach when there was a mass shooting that I was 1 hour removed from, and this morning I woke up.
You were at the beach?
I was riding my bike on Hollywood Beach 1 hour before that happened. On the promenade, yes, at 1 hour. And I went to an event on Sunday with the Circle of Brotherhood that was held in Miami, in an area that is, of course, riddled with gun, violence. But I want to point out again, just on the news story that was just on here, we're talking about arming people that are not just here to, have random gun violence. They're arming people like the Proud Boys who are terrorists. Yeah. The word up there was extremists again. They're terrorists. They're terrorizing our community. They're terrorizing. They're terrorizing the Jewish community. The Latino Black community. Women's rights advocates, and we're now giving them more guns. So we're setting up a system here in our country where we're arming people that are not afraid, as we saw on January 6th, to use weapons and to use all means necessary to get what they want.
Open season.
What do we think is going to happen?
Yeah. Why aren't we having more conversations about us as a community learning how to defend ourselves? That these conversations need to be happening right now.
Yeah.
We need to learn how to protect ourselves if we do know we're under attack. We do feel it. Why don't we know where to go to protect ourselves? Where can we take courses? Where can we learn how to protect ourselves? Where can we learn how to control our firearms if we need to get them ourselves? It's getting to that point. We have to stop running from it and actually acknowledge that we need those conversations.
To me, to your observation, I still have hope that we're going to back off the ledge that we're at.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why our activists don't talk about the challenge that you put in front of us is that we're still hopeful that it won't come to that. You say hopeful, I say unrealistic. Yeah,
the woman that I met at this event, she said, my parents were from the Holocaust, and she said, they started with banning books, and she said, this is a story that can repeat itself very easily. But I have a question for you, because you were at Gay Days this past weekend, which is a celebration, we're okay to celebrate from time to time. But was there a conversation about like people that were coming from out of state to this event? Like, were they apprehensive? Did you hear any chatter, or was it just a celebration?
It's funny. We didn't discuss.
No.
You were going to ask me this. Very strategic question. In the circles of the gay male, predominantly white circles of events in Orlando, there was no conversation, no conversation of the politics. The pageant, the drag queen pageant, there was lots of protest conversation, costuming, etc. You know where there was uproarious anger was at Girls in Wonderland. The women it was breathtaking to me. It was protest. We're having a great time. It's a party, but there was protest. But I have to say to you, other than that, it wasn't.
I'll say this, as a gun owner, lawful gun owner, not a crazy extremist or anything, and this is just my view, I'm speaking for myself here on this, I do think that people should buy guns. I do think that we're at a point in history right now where no one's going to defend us right now, and we're not going to have a federal government in 4 years that will be able to defend us. So me as like a black male, but also as a queer person, I feel comfortable having a gun to protect myself, not from no government or anything. You can't beat the government, but from individuals who may take it upon themselves.
The pastor at the Steadfast Church in Texas.
Right, or people like they killed the I forget the name of the individual in Georgia, chased and shot with a shotgun. I assure you, with me, will not be happening.
Wow.
Powerful.
Well, next up, let's queer up the worldview. This is going to surprise you. Ted Cruz fights with conservative Florida preacher over a deadly anti-LGBTQ plus Uganda law. Senator Ted Cruz has had an exchange and joined the ranks of public figures condemning Uganda's anti-gay legislation, calling it horrific and wrong. He tweeted that any law criminalizing homosexuality is grotesque and an abomination, urging civilized nations to condemn Uganda's law. His stance was met with backlash from some conservatives. While condemnation came from both major political parties, some on the right have defended the law that implements the death penalty for some gay people in Uganda. Cruz on Monday responded to a pastor who criticized his opposition to Uganda's law. He also hit back with another question, pointing to another Leviticus verse that reads, quote, "For anyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death," end quote. Tom Askell, pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Cape Coral, Florida, that's Fort Myers, responded to Cruz's tweet calling out Uganda's law, writing, quote, "Tell it to God, Ted," end quote, while citing Leviticus 20:13, a Bible verse frequently used to justify opposition to LGBTQ plus rights. Askell told Newsweek he does not believe the U.S. government should execute gay people, but that the point of his question was to, quote, "determine if the senator believes that when God criminalized homosexual conduct in the Old Testament, that our Maker was guilty of prescribing a law horrific and grotesque as law," end quote. It's interesting first, before I comment on Ted Cruz, it's interesting that the pastor in Fort Myers, which is a metropolitan community of 700,000 people, we're not talking about backwash Alabama.
No offense to backwash.
Yes, no offense to backwash. Well, probably offense.
Love your gumbo.
He ignores Cruz's observation that you can pull a sentence out of the Old Testament and prove anything you want, and he ignores that. I'm going to criticize mom and dad, and if I criticize them, put him or her to death. That was the point that Cruz was making, totally ignored. Just goes back to home base and says, God's word is absolute law. But wait, Senator Cruz pointed out, it is not absolute law because we would be executing, probably all of us, I know I have violated that scriptural law and should be put to death because I have had words or consternation with my mom and my dad. Right, exactly. So he totally misses the point, and of course he's going to miss the point.
Very surprised by Ted Cruz, I just have to say.
Yeah, and that was the other point that I wanted
Maybe he
to
should
make.
tell his colleagues.
I, historically, do not agree with almost any words that have ever come out of Ted Cruz's mouth. And he confuses me because I can't find a way to criticize Ted Cruz in this moment because he does everything that we would want an ally over world politics of what's going on in Uganda to say, this is completely grotesque and it should be stopped and we should all oppose it. And he challenges everybody. We criticize the right for all of their vagaries, and really the ultra-left too, the extreme left, of all of the vagaries of why can't you just come out and say this is wrong? That's exactly what Ted Cruz has done here. How do we criticize Ted Cruz when he does exactly what we've asked him to do?
Well,
so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I wish he has that same energy in the Senate and in Congress. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Gaetz, the others.
Is there hope for Ted Cruz, do you think?
I don't know. I think Ted Cruz does what feels right in the moment, what feels the best for his ambition. Just a few years ago, he was talking about how, pronouns, it's just two genders and two sets and everything. But I think Ted Cruz is doing what's right for his poll numbers. If he feels like he's going to enter the presidential race, or he feels like there's, I think he's a little smarter than people like Trump and DeSantis. He gets that, in order for me to win, I need to win over some group of people, some moderates. And so in this moment, he probably feels, okay, well, there's some maneuvering I can do there.
Does that mean you don't think it's, do you think he's being disingenuous in saying this?
I don't think we'll ever know. I mean, only actions will be able to tell us that.
The whole point of all this is we see people evolve and they grow, they learn different things. They learn about, it wasn't that long ago when gay men didn't know how to use pronouns either. So it's a time, things eventually get there. And the thing is, people tend to downplay when Republicans are supportive. There are a lot more that are supportive than we do hear a lot against us. But at the same time, not every Democrat's so pro-LGBTQ as well.
By the way, just a little sidebar in terms of accuracy note, the majority of Republicans that identify as Republicans in America support the LGBTQ community. Cannot dismiss that. Right. The majority do.
It's also interesting, I wonder if this pastor knows how to read Aramaic, because when you go back and look at the actual translation, it says, you shall not lie with another boy, not man, referring to pedophilia. But that's never, ever talked about, is it? In that case, I do support the death penalty, personally.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, has something come into Ted Cruz's life that has made him maybe speak out against this? And whether, is it someone from his family?
What do you think?
I mean, the other thing is political aspirations. Does he want to maybe leave the Senate and run for governor of Texas when Greg Abbott is done? Because Greg Abbott is so far on the, against the LGBT community, so this is his way. I mean, again, Ted Cruz is very, of all the things he is, he's very strategic. Right. So there is something, either, like you said, constituents, maybe it's something in his personal family life.
I think he has a family member who...
I thought it was when he grew that beard and now he identifies as a bear. I thought that's what it was.
Just one final thought. We're going to move on. I know that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of LGBT that are exactly like me right now, that are confused. Ted Cruz has confused me. For sure. And I love the words, and I want to believe him, and it's really hard to believe him, but I want to. I know there's thousands of LGBT or same stuff.
And this side, we applaud him.
Yes.
Once. Next, let's queer up education. Moms for Liberty have meltdown over Seminole County yearbook pages featuring LGBTQ+ students. Florida high school will issue refunds after parents and students whined that the yearbook staff went woke and included inappropriate LGBTQ content in its annual publication. According to the Orlando Sentinel, Lyman High School, part of Seminole County Public Schools, released a 256-page yearbook. 2 of those pages spotlighted LGBTQ+ students and highlighted gender identity terms like gender fluid and non-binary. It was enough to send Seminole County Moms for Liberty Chair Jessica Tillman into a hissy fit, and she submitted a complaint forcing the district administration to say they would offer alternatives to people who already paid but didn't want a copy of the current school-sponsored student yearbook. Seminole County Public Schools Superintendent Sarita Bayman wrote in a letter, a few students and parents have reported that they found this content to be inappropriate, end quote. While this matter is being reviewed further at the district level, any student or parent who purchased a copy of the 2022-23 Lyman yearbook may choose to return it to the school for a full refund or request an exchange for a reprinted yearbook that omits the pages in question. Parents and students have until June 29th to request a canceled order or modified yearbook, the letter added. Now, I want to applaud the editor of that yearbook, because you and your students who actually knew what you were doing in today's day and age in Florida showed real courage. And I think that needs to be commended. Having people get up into a hissy fit because you have 2 pages out of 256 that they could just rip out instead, making this much of a fuss of it, good for you. That is advocacy, and that is where I have hope.
Jennifer Tillman and the other moms for day drinking are so bored with their failed marriages and their brain dead brats that the only way they can feel good about themselves is to lash out at us because our lives are so much better than theirs will ever be.
On a side note, day drinking is kind of cool, but Moms for Liberty is not.
Right. The thing that really infuriates me is this talk about woke. But then when anything slightly ruffles the feathers of the other side, I mean, ever so slightly, like you said, I would have went to those people and said, here's your yearbook back. Yeah. Next. Like, why are we feeding these people? Because again, the majority of the parents at that school didn't say anything, and they're going to reprint the yearbooks and give them a refund. If you don't like the pages, rip them out, or give them maybe a refund is it, but reprinting the yearbooks.
It's because hypocrisy runs deep.
Whiny crybabies, snowflakes. You remember that term, snowflakes? Everything.
Squeaky wheels.
Exactly.
M&Ms. Yeah. Cartoons, books, everything, just snowflakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Upset about everything.
Just a final thought here. Moms for Liberty, Jessica Tillman. First off, I haven't seen her picture, but she is a white, teetotaling, afternoon golfing, 40-something-year-old woman. Oh, there we are. Now we have the picture. Thank you. She is set up, Moms for Liberty is a terrorist group that was set up by Ron DeSantis's circle and is a creation here in Florida. And they're a terrorist group. The standard that I always apply to stories like this, it's a reasonableness standard. And I always try to at least give the benefit of the doubt, and I apply a reasonableness standard. Let's take gay out. Let's take the 2 pages of the yearbook out, and let's put in the Black Student Union in Lyman High School's yearbook. Would Moms for Liberty say, wait, you can't have a Black Student Union of 2 pages, and therefore we're going to boycott and scream and blah, 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 blah. We want our money back because you can't show Black people, or you can't show Jewish people, or you can't show Muslim people, or you can't show Latino people. This is a white Christian nationalist mentality of Moms for Liberty that flows out of Governor DeSantis's office. Therefore, if you understand it that way, you recognize, oh, I now understand what's going on here. It's ignorance for their ignorance. The other thing is, I just want to take your observation one step farther. You know they shouldn't tear the pages out of the yearbook. Of course they should. Let's tear it out. But we're Moms for Liberty, so we go all old-fashioned. Let's just burn it.
Yeah.
And we'll be done.
Print your own yearbook.
Yeah.
On demand.
I think digital now anyway.
Yeah. Next is Queer Up the Courts. Conservative U.S. Supreme Court to decide on race, elections, and freedom of religion issues this month. As the Supreme Court races to issue all outstanding opinions by a self-imposed early July deadline, there's little doubt that the conservative majority is prepared to continue the rightward trajectory in areas concerning affirmative action, election law, and LGBTQ+ rights. The liberal justices, behind the scenes, are undoubtedly trying to figure out how to best utilize their firepower in dissent. They could also be working feverishly to pick off a conservative vote, or at least narrow the legal scope of an opinion. The court is considering whether colleges and universities can continue to take race into consideration as a factor in admissions, a decision that could overturn long-standing precedent that has benefited Black and Latino students. The lower court ruling invalidated Alabama's congressional maps under Section 2 of the law and ordered new maps to be drawn with an additional majority Black district to account for the fact that 27% of the state is Black. The lower court held that the state's maps violated Section 2 of the VRA, Voter Rights Act, which bans discrimination based on race. The Supreme Court is also considering 2 challenges to President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program, an initiative aimed at providing targeted debt relief to millions of student loan borrowers that has so far been stalled by illegal challenges. don't know where to start. I mean, there's so much on the line here with the Supreme Court, and it's just a reminder that it's important that we vote because I get it. It's not a honeymoon. I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Biden, but the judges do matter in this case, and we're going to probably see a couple of our rights get taken away this month. I'm just going to go out and say it. Maybe you'll have a justice or two that comes to their senses and say, we're not going to pretty much impoverish everybody, because I have student loans. I have student debt, and Biden's plan, while it's not the furthest, it is helpful. And what the Republicans are saying, what the right is saying, what those justices are saying or will be saying soon, is that we don't care if you can afford your student loan payments. So we don't care what your financial situation is. We want you to suffer. And that's the truth.
Are there 4 more terrifying words in the English language than conservative U.S. Supreme Court? I get chills, absolute chills.
Well, I'm wondering, with all of the attention that's on the Supreme Court right now, both for their actions out of court, including Justice Thomas' behavior of taking, millions and millions of dollars not reported, which is required.
Thomas is on the tape?
Yes.
A grifter.
Wait, it's not.
And, and the tarnished image that they came in with, that I'm wondering if they'll have any sense of their position in history of looking at some of these things. I unfortunately do think that the one that's going to have the most trouble is the student debt relief, because of the powers of the president to be able to do that. So that one is probably the most in jeopardy. But from just, a human rights interest, I do think, obviously affirmative action just carries so much more weight about, what has happened in our country and continues to happen in our country, that to say that affirmative action to be, not able to be used would be a terrible decision.
And actually, a lot of white people use affirmative action. I think, I don't know the exact number on this, but just like food stamps, there's a saying the right has where it's the black people on the food stamps. It's actually mostly white people on the food stamps.
Absolutely.
But in this case, they think of affirmative action and they think it only applies to black or Latino students, or sometimes Asian American students, but a lot of white people utilize affirmative action.
It's interesting to me. It's how Governor DeSantis has become so powerful, because he's changed the narrative approach, where there's a very significant acceptance to the conceptual idea that he is saying. Somehow he's been able to convince a reasonable number of people that the overwhelming white male majority is somehow discriminated against. And he has sold this concept using the phrase of woke and the free state of Florida and mask and don't Fauci my Florida, et cetera, and so on, to convince a reasonable number of people, including women, which is a shock to me, that somehow white older men are oppressed. And I assure you, I'm not oppressed. But he has changed the narrative in a very substantial way to this conclusion. Unfortunately, affirmative action is probably going to go down in flames in this Supreme Court ruling month. Student debt, I make a prediction, is dead on arrival. Is dead on arrival. And all of these actions are because principally at the end of the Obama administration, the court was fundamentally changed. And because Hillary Clinton didn't become president of the United States, Trump was able to appoint 3 justices. And in combination with the 3 justices, one of which would have been a Obama appointee, we're suffering with the loss of affirmative action, the loss of student debt, whatever other related LGBT issues that are going to come, but worst of all, the ability to reframe Christian nationalism in America to a conclusion that it seems reasonable that white older people are being discriminated against. These are all the consequences of the loss of that election in 2016.
There's something Maxwell Frost said recently. I can't say it on here, but I think it very much applies to Ron DeSantis in this moment.
I have to say, part of the loss is due to our community. It's due to us. We, and honest, the civil rights movement in general, we were given so many tools that we could have utilized from 1963 on that were designed to end generational poverty that we have not enacted and put into place. And we've long since forgotten about them. Things like community land trusts and different ways of actually creating home ownership for vulnerable populations that end generational poverty. But we don't talk about these things. We focus on what we don't have. But we have a treasure trove of things that we could put into place today that could change our generations to come. But we're looking everywhere else for the answers. They're right in front of us. We've already got them. Why aren't we using them? Why aren't we talking about them? We're not going to see a change by going after things that are too far out of our reach. We already have things in front of us. Let's stop whining about it and get to work. Stop talking about it and just do something.
And I blame Democrats too. Everybody says it's the Republicans. Yeah, but we had power for a long time. And
we said in Florida, wait, there's the 800-pound gorilla of failure. The Florida Democratic Party has failed for a decade. In terms of recruiting, in terms of money, in terms of being outmaneuvered by the GOP in Florida. You've gotten your ass kicked. And the result is what we have in Florida. And the LGBTQ community is taking it on the chin because of the Democrats' failure.
Yeah, and nationally too. There's a lot of things we could have done when we had the power, and we failed to do it. And because we have this belief somehow that everything is going to pan out great. Republicans really won't do that.
New York doesn't feel the way Florida does. California for sure doesn't feel the way Florida does. Okay, you're safe. But nationally, we need the Democrats to do a different kind of thing, or whoever the constituency is. But in Florida, very specifically, we need the Democrats to act differently. We have 15 months now. We'll see what happens. We'll see. But the Democrats have done a really poor job.
Let's say that the politicians have done that. We need to remind them they are first civil servants. They're here to serve us.
Absolutely. Well, next, let's queer up trans rights. Texas trans healthcare bans will force youth to detransition. Texas has become the latest state to ban gender-affirming care for trans youth. On Friday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed SB 14 into law, which says doctors cannot prescribe youth hormones or puberty blockers and cannot perform gender-affirming surgery on minors, something that is already extremely rare. It also says that any youth currently receiving such care must be weaned off their treatment, essentially forcing them to detransition. A report from the Williams Institute found that approximately 30,000 Texas youth ages 13 to 17 identify as trans. It has the third largest population of trans youth after California and New York. The ACLU of Texas has already voiced plans to challenge the bill, tweeting, quote, "Abbott can't stop trans youth from thriving in Texas and will take him to court to make sure of it. Important. Healthcare for trans youth is still legal in Texas until September 1st, 2023. We are doing everything in our power to preserve access to this life-saving, evidence-based healthcare beyond that date," end quote. The legislation is causing some parents to consider fleeing the state with their children. The American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics have all rejected claims that gender-affirming care is harmful to transgender children or adults. All of these organizations support best practice medical care for trans youth. Well, first, there you have it. Medical organizations commenting about medical care, not
push your science out on me.
Not governors and legislators that know nothing about what they're passing laws for. The second is, I find, and again, this is happening here in Florida, is the fact of parents having to leave the place that they live to care for their children. As a parent, I can't imagine having to uproot myself to get my son health care. It wouldn't even cross my mind. My clients are here, my livelihood is here, my business is here, my family is here. How does someone, you can't uproot yourself for gender-affirming healthcare or a women's abortion healthcare or any of these other services that are being outlawed in all of these red states. I mean, it is an abomination, is what it should be called. And I really hope that, again, the courts step up, as we're seeing starting here in Florida. I hope this trend continues to see that this is again, my body, my choice is the rally cry of the right, and about wearing masks. But when it comes to giving your own family or your own self health care, they're trying to limit it.
And it was Judge Hinkle who also mentioned the medical stuff, the science. I mean, it's just there. I just think that Greg Abbott, like the previously mentioned Liberty Bibberty, Jennifer Tillman, is just another one of those people whose life is such misery and torment that he's only happy when he's making other people suffer as much as he is.
I don't want to go into too much emotional side of it, but I do want to say that he is conniving. He did try to do this very first thing on the eve of the Ukrainian war breakdown, when he tried making it illegal and tried rounding up any trans child and their siblings and removing them from their parents' care and then putting them in the broken foster care system, even though they had a loving family at home. They did that, and then it was hushed up because the Ukrainian war was the next day, and that was intentional. So it was, I just think he's an evil human being, and one day I hope that he gets his reckoning.
Yeah, he's a very particular gremlin, but this is what he wants. He wants people to leave the state.
Yeah.
And that's what DeSantis wants too. They want refugees leaving. And soon, if they take over an entire country, they want us out of the country too. And that's the end goal.
It's sad to me. Presidential candidate Ron DeSantis's cousin, Bud Abbott, is cut out of the same cloth. They're both highly educated. They're both much, much smarter than they're letting on. You don't go to school at Yale and Harvard and go to law school and be dumb at Ivy education. So what's really behind this is the politics of election, power, money. We know what all of this is about. The problem is when somebody like this gets access to the power and the money for political gain, we have a history, unfortunately, in America of frequently making very bad choices. And it's not until we realize how bad the choices were that we made that we have regret and recrimination of them. Quick examples. In 1942, after Pearl Harbor, we interned hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans, where we spent millions of dollars and huge amounts of apology of going, my goodness, how could we have possibly done this to you? But it took years of us in terms of reparation to do that. In 1958, a governor in Alabama stands on the steps named George Wallace and criminalizes black people in Alabama, and it's used as a cry to justify the same actions all across the South. In 1988, Ronald Reagan won't speak the word AIDS, and we marginalize those that are literally dying at our fingertips because they become a marginalized class, because we can. America can do that and marginalize black people. That's what we're doing in 2023 to trans. Identification is between 0.9% and 1.6% of all of America. Why would the man in the wheelchair in Texas, intentioned words, by the way, pick on a trans person in Texas? It's because he can, and he's going to do it to further his aspirations of power and money. They're the most despicable portions of our nature. It was true in 42 against Japanese Americans. It was true in 58 in Alabama against the black community. It was true in 88 against AIDS and those that were dying. And it's true today. But Abbott is a despicable human being.
And it's the same people, by the way. They didn't die yet.
Yeah.
Next, let's square up politics. Recently divorced MTG starts Pride Month with transphobia. Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene began Pride Month with a vile transphobic tweet. Greene has long aired her deeply homophobic and transphobic views in public, referring to Democrats as groomers and pedophiles for supporting gender-affirming care for trans youth, which she calls a child mutilation industry. She launched a homophobic verbal attack on a lesbian stepmom, saying, "Step and adoptive parents are not real mothers." Greene has also called trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney a pedophile, claimed that straight people will be extinct in about 4 or 5 generations, and even sold t-shirts mocking monkeypox, which has particularly affected gay and bisexual men. On June 1st, a month dedicated to uplifting LGBTQ+ voices and supporting LGBTQ+ rights, Green decided to share some extremely on-brand transphobia, tweeting, quote, "There are 2 genders, male and female. Trust the science," end quote. Green's tweet was quickly inundated by replies from LGBTQ+ users and allies calling the Republican lawmaker out for her apparent embrace of science after her personal Twitter account was suspended last year for spreading COVID-19 misinformation, while others simply wished her and other anti-LGBTQ+ haters a very uncomfortable Pride Month. Listen up, Butch. I can't thank you enough for introducing me to the concept of the straight extinction we can look forward to in 4 or 5 generations. If I had a time machine, I would set it for then, throw a fabulous straight free party, and invite all my LGBTQ+ friends. Too bad you won't be on the guest list.
That science is incredibly interesting. You know, I wonder if we could scientifically prove that Jesus was trans. We can. I mean, after all, we have XX and XY chromosomes, correct? Well, if there was no father to actually give the other chromosome, Jesus was just an X chromosome, which, by the way, is called Turner syndrome and also presents as female. So, yes, we do have more than one gender, and if Jesus was, in fact, only one X chromosome, that means he was also trans by presenting himself as male while actually being born appearing female.
He wasn't white. He wasn't white.
He wasn't white.
Because we're a dress.
We just have a target on the backs of our heads right now. Don't go to Texas to that church.
And a crown. Sorry. I don't like to use the I don't like covering any stories about, I'll just call her MGT, because I think it's just giving someone who's completely vile any more light. But what is mutilating children across the country, I'm on a soapbox a little bit, are guns. Guns are actually mutilating children across the country, in schools, in malls.
Uvalde.
Yeah.
Sandy Hook.
Yeah. In Tennessee.
380 other schools.
Yeah.
Yes. A 1-year-old was shot on the beach. It was one of the victims in Hollywood that, was again, not killed, but injured.
Mutilated.
So everyone in Georgia, I'm so sorry that this has to be your representative. I know that she obviously won the election fair and square, because I do believe that. But I hope that, parents and everyone who's looking to, live in a safe community looks at her voting record and the things that she's focusing on, because she's not protecting people and parents or families or children in Georgia at all.
Jeff, I applaud you, because you're more generous than me. First off, MTG is a clown. Mm-hmm. So there's no point in even discussing her, because, it's like a vaudevillian. They're just going to perform the dog and pony show as they've designed it to do. That's irrelevant and off the table. But I applaud you for being more forgiving of the Georgia district that votes her in. Mm-hmm. I don't forgive them, because at the end of the day, history will judge them. And the 2 times that you've voted for, or maybe 3 times, I can't remember now, for MTG, you're going to go back and agonize the votes that you did for her in that district, and the majority that she carries in that district. And the proof of that is there's a very interesting book, and I watched a focus group of a documentary of a group of German citizens in the 1980s that were around when the Nazi Party began to come to power, and what happened in the 30s, and their support of the democratic process to bring Adolf Hitler to power and the Nazis to power. They came to power democratically. Mm-hmm.
They were voted down.
MTG comes to power representing that district in Georgia democratically. Mm-hmm. But then it all goes awry. And they sit around and talk about the regret that they had in knowing the hate speech that was coming out of the Nazis in the 1930s, and the blame of the Jews, and the blame on the homosexual community, and them talking about, why did I go along with this? And vote for them democratically to bring them to power, to ultimate authoritarianism. And then their regret. Well, to those Germans that were in that documentary 40 some years later, I have no sympathy for you, because you participated in the overthrow of your entire society every step of the way. That's exactly what's going on in this district in Georgia.
Well, remember, she's also on Trump's short list for vice president if he's the nominee.
Well,
but I do want to just say one more thing about the reason that I say that about voters is that, you know, the Democratic Party did leave behind people that were poor, white, and uneducated, and who don't have the resources. Again, my family is from West Virginia, voted 70% for Trump, is become, you know, the reddest of red voting bloc, and vote against their own interests because they're not educated, and the Democratic Party did not speak to them to uplift them, to say, like, you know, the ideals of the Democratic Party were not brought to, and so what did they fall into? This trap of, let's blame gay people, black people, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is what we created because we didn't speak to those voters, and I think that's the problem.
We also have to have a populist message of the economy as well, because Republicans will lie and pretend to be populist.
Yes,
but
exactly.
They really just want death counts.
Yeah. All right. Well, now get a sneak peek at this week's headlines from the new newspaper here in South Florida, Out South Florida.
This week in Out South Florida, powered by Queer News Tonight. I'm Out South Florida senior reporter John Hayden. In this week's issue, Stonewall Security. We go inside final safety preparations before next weekend's event. Also, these popsicles won't melt away. The community rallies around a vandalized art installation. And Pride Week starts with a party at sea. It's all aboard for Floatorama. I'm John Hayden. Those stories and more in Out South Florida, on stands now, and always updated online.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news, let's queer up gay culture. Conservatives are mad at Chick-fil-A over the company's diversity policies. Some on the right are upset that American fast food restaurant chain Chick-fil-A has gone woke for having diversity, equity, and inclusion. Italian-American political commentator and Miami resident Joey Manarino, whose pronouns on Twitter are listed as "shut up," tweeted, quote, "Any company that is pushing the trans stuff on our kids or the DEI stuff We are going to pick up the worst offenders and boycott. We will not support companies that hate values, end quote. Manarino linked to Chick-fil-A, liked Chick-fil-A's diversity, equity, and inclusion page, where the company highlights its effort to create a culture of belonging, invest in scholarship funds, and fight hunger. He conducted a poll receiving over 110,000 submissions asking followers whether they should boycott Chick-fil-A or not, with a 53% voting no. The chicken's good.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Queer Up Entertainment. New York City's largest LGBTQ plus film festival loses corporate funding.
At NewFest, we create a space where we say gay every single day, and we encourage you to do it as well. Say it proudly. Tell the world that we are here, we are queer, and we are not going anywhere.
All I can say, keep fighting, keep pushing, keep believing, keep loving, and keep going. Because we need each and every one of you to make our story change the world.
New York City's largest presenter of LGBTQ plus film and media lost a corporate sponsor at the start of this year's third annual NewFest Pride on June 1st. David Hatkoff, executive director of NewFest, told the crowd at the New York premiere of the indie drama Fairyland about the abrupt shift. He feels corporate sponsors suddenly backed out due to fear of recoil from anti-LGBTQ plus extremists. A press release for the event from Mayless, Chevrolet, Chevrolet, SVA Theater, Gilead, Kettle One, and Mubi as sponsors. However, all companies except Chevrolet have been recognized during the festival thus far. Chevrolet, who began its ongoing Pride initiative in 2021, was set to present LGBT Nation's docuseries, Authentic Voices of Pride, in person and virtually on June 3rd, followed by a discussion, but the NewFest website has removed the webpage for the screening and no longer lists the event on the festival's full lineup. However, Chevrolet remains on the overall NewFest website listed as a sponsor.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up politics. Taylor Swift starts Pride Month calling for fans to vote out homophobes. Taylor Swift is taking a strong stand in support of the LGBTQ plus community. The 12-time Grammy Award winner marked Pride Month by telling the nearly 64,000 people who packed Chicago's Soldier Field, quote, "First things first, happy Pride Month, everyone. We can support as much as we want during Pride Month, but we need to do our research on those elected officials. Are they advocates? Are they allies? Are they protectors of equality? Do I want to vote for them? In short, vote for those who support the LGBTQ plus community."
I'm looking out tonight, I'm seeing so many incredible, just individuals who are living authentically and beautifully, and this is a safe space for you. This is a celebratory space for you. And I wish that every place was safe and beautiful for people in the LGBTQ community. I really wish that. There have been so many harmful pieces of legislation that have put people in the LGBTQ and the queer community at risk. Because we can support as much as we want during Pride Month, but if we're not doing our research on these elected officials, are they advocates? Are they allies? Are they protectors of equality? Do I want to vote for them?
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up gay culture. Abbott Elementary star Tyler James Williams warns speculating on sexuality can be dangerous. Abbott Elementary star Tyler James Williams spoke out on Sunday against people speculating his sexual identity, given the perpetual harm it causes for those questioning how they identify. He said, quote, "Overanalyzing someone's behavior in an attempt to catch them directly contributes to the anxiety a lot of queer and queer questioning people feel when they fear living in their truth. It makes the most pedestrian of conversations and interactions in spaces feel less safe for our gay brothers and sisters and those who may be questioning," end quote.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up gay culture. Pride demon jab from conservative becomes queer meme and shirt. Delaware conservative activist and QAnon supporter Lauren Witzke posted an image on Twitter that repeats the smushed together words Pride Month in a column until letters fade to highlight demon in the middle with the rainbow colors. Witzke, a former Senate candidate, went on to liken the LGBTQ plus community to demons and appealed to her followers to unite against Pride Month, which started on June 1st. The demon meme almost immediately went viral with over 13,000 quote tweets, most of them being from LGBTQ plus people clowning on it. In a beautifully ironic moment, however, it turns out that Witzke inadvertently directed attention to trans artist Vea, who originally created the graphic. Vea has since released the graphic for purchase on t-shirts with text in rainbow as well as other pride variations such as pansexual, trans, and intersex flag color schemes for less than $20. That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Elijah Manley, Jacob Reide Jennings, Jeff Oliverio, and Gregg Shapiro. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you
good night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire